what are some of the most dangerous places on this planet and how exactly would they kill you? Well, in today's video, I'm going to answer both of those questions. Because all of the places on this list are places that you can die in, this isn't necessarily in order of most deadly, but actually most interesting, with some surprises mixed in. And as a quick side note, this video is focused on natural phenomenon, so I'm excluding things like crime. Now let's begin. First off on our list, we have something that seems like more of an obvious entry, but maybe not for the reason you think. That being the top of Mount Everest. Besides the obvious danger of scaling the tallest mountain in the world, even if you magically teleported to the top of Mount Everest, without proper equipment, you would be dead in minutes. Why? Because it's so cold, right? Well, no. Actually, just because the oxygen is so thin at that altitude. Now, there is two ways this can be avoided. The first and most common method is simply having an oxygen tank on you. They're obviously extremely bulky and make climbing more difficult, but the air is more than worth it. And the second method is simply by spending weeks and months acclimating to the air. Because this death is somewhat easily avoided, and the fact that hundreds and maybe even thousands of people climb Mount Everest every year, this is only the first entry on the list. Because if you teleported onto the top of Mount Everest, if you were well prepared, you'd be completely fine. But without specialized warm clothing and auxiliary air, the lack of oxygen and warmth would kill you in minutes. Fun. Now let's move on. Jumping over to South America, we have the Death Road in Bolivia. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it looks like this, and I'm sure you've seen pictures or videos of it somewhere online. If you're unfamiliar, the Death Road is essentially a 70-kilometer long road that is extremely narrow, twisty, and has 2,000-foot drops at almost every turn. Oh, and it's also prone to fog, landslides, cascades, and fun stuff like that. In other words, this is just the road that all of our grandparents took to school, apparently. Now, for reasons that shouldn't be too hard to understand, this road has a relatively high death toll and claims the lives of 200 to 300 people per year. And honestly, I don't see that number going down anytime soon because this road has become a tourist attraction for thrill seekers. And maybe I'm just weird, but I don't get it. Like for me, watching the videos is more than enough. Now, one interesting thing about the Death Road in Bolivia is that this is the only entry on the list that's actually man-made. This was supposed to be genuine infrastructure and unfortunately is extremely deadly. And as far as how this would kill you, well, your car would fall 2,000 feet and explode. Okay, this next dangerous place isn't actually one place, it's a type of place. That being a war zone. But not just any war zone. A war zone in today's video sponsor, War Thunder. Hear me out. War Thunder is an epic free-to-play military action game where you literally fight on air, land, and sea with vehicle selection spanning across an entire century. And one of the best parts is you can play it anywhere. It's available on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and even Mac. War Thunder does an amazing job of capturing the scale and sensation of fierce military battles using really accurate military equipment. Like I mentioned earlier, their list of equipment of tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships includes iconic and even lesser known prototypes from the mid-20th century up until the present day. If you happen to be a fan of military vehicles, you're going to be thrilled at how detailed every element of equipment is in War Thunder, both visually and in gameplay. I mean, look at it. You can't tell me this doesn't look like a blockbuster movie. All vehicles in the game can be upgraded and improved with additional modules. In addition, War Thunder offers a huge amount of visual customization elements like skins, allowing you to make your combat machine unique. Who knows, maybe they'll add a Trust Me Bro skin one day. There's a lot to like about this game, but one of my favorite elements is the unique damage model. There's no need for health bars. Every hit on the enemy has its effect. Whether you disable their track and immobilize your opponent or hit their fuel tank and literally watch them explode, each hit is visualized with an X-ray mode. With the game's most recent update, Alpha Strike, there is now a plethora of new equipment, both modern and classic, and the visual effects have been significantly improved. And the gameplay has also been refined based off community requests. And best yet, a brand new map, North Holland, has been added for intense tank and aviation battles. So bro, why not after this video give it a try? It's free. All new players and players that haven't played in at least half a year will receive some special bonuses. Those include rentals for the P-40E1 aircraft and M4 tank, a special decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 silver lions, 3 premium vehicles for free, and a week of having a premium account and even more gifts if that's even possible. Hurry up because the American vehicle bonus season ends soon. Use my link in the pinned comment or at the top of the description to check out War Thunder today, and thank you War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Next up, we have Lake Natron in Tanzania, and this honestly seems like a body of water straight off of Mars or something. The characteristics of it are absolutely insane, and what it could do to you is terrifying. If you saw my last video on SCPs, then this might even remind you a bit of the one SCP, which is literally a red lake. The lake is roughly 60 kilometers long and 22 kilometers wide, and it's not very deep at all, with an average depth of around 3 meters. The lake has a distinct reddish colors in most places and gets its name from its extremely high natron content, and it's actually really warm too, anywhere from 40 to 60 degrees Celsius. So there's this red, shallow, warm pool. What about it? Why is it so deadly? Well, for starters, the chemical properties of the water are known to calcify the bodies of any living creature that dies in the water, turning them into stone before they can even decompose. So it'll mummify you. Great, but how will it kill you? Well, Lake Natron has a bunch of fun ways. Let me explain. Like I mentioned earlier, that lake is extremely high in natron, which is an extremely alkaline chemical. And parts of this lake have been recorded to have a pH level as high as 12, which is as or more alkaline than ammonia. If you get this water directly in your eyes, it can cause permanent blindness. And even if you're not in or around the water, you can still get atmospheric ammonia, which will burn your nose, throat, and eyes. If both of those wasn't enough, this lake is extremely high in cyanobacteria, which thrives in the ecosystem in which Lake Natron provides. The cyanobacteria in the water appear as algae, and if ingested or even inhaled, can cause breathing problems, diarrhea, and worse. And if that's not bad enough, the water is a breeding ground for flamingos, which in huge packs can be aggressive if they feel threatened. So just consider this for a second. You're walking around and you see a beautiful red lake. Let's go for a swim. As soon as you go underwater and open your eyes, you're now permanently blind in both eyes. You come up from underneath the water to get a deep breath, and now your throat and nose are burning. You're walking around aimlessly trying to find the shore, but you're blinded and burning and you can barely breathe. You also inhaled some of the cyanobacteria, and now you're coughing and having diarrhea everywhere. Because of how aggressive and strange you're acting, you're scaring the flamingos and they start pecking you to death. And the hot water in combination with the hot sun is killing you and you slowly pass out from heat exhaustion. And because the water is so high in natron, your body is mummified forever. I don't know about you, but I think this lake is pretty deadly. But in case you're not convinced, I have another body of water that might be a little bit deadlier. The Strid, or also known as the Bolton Strid in Abbey, Yorkshire, England, is known as one of the most dangerous bodies of water in the entire world. Now, obviously there are waterways and oceans and rapids and waterfalls that have taken more lives in general, but the most dangerous part about this body of water is the fact that it is so unassuming, and also the fact that it's a tourist attraction and people like to jump over it because it's only a few meters wide. So if this Strid is not that wide and presumably not that deep and looks unassuming, what makes it so dangerous? Well, because of the geography of the water, it actually moves in a quite interesting pattern that has carved out caverns below the surface of the rock in the Strid. So the Strid looks shallow and narrow, but below the water is very deep and also very wide, with essentially underground caves that if you get sucked into, you will not get out of. When I was originally making this list, I was going to replace this entry with Niagara Falls because I was like, well, I mean, Niagara Falls is like this on steroids. It's killed so many people and it's way bigger, way more powerful. But then I realized people have actually survived going over Niagara Falls, but the Bolton Strid has claimed to have an 100% fatality rate, meaning that, in my opinion, it's more dangerous. Getting out of the water and heading back to South America, let's talk about Snake Island in Brazil. Snake Island is a small island off the coast of Brazil in the Atlantic Ocean and has become famous for its abundance of snakes, hence the name, Snake Island. The island is completely uninhabitable by humans, and the Brazilian Navy has even forbid visitors, except for authorized scientific expeditions. And you might be wondering, well, what kind of snakes are on this island? Just like, you know, little gardener snakes, little anger noodles, or whatever they call it? Of course not. It is a venomous snake known as the golden lancehead pit viper. Initially, there was believed to be 430,000 snakes on this island, but more recent estimates say that there's only 2,000 to 4,000, which is still a lot for how small this island is. Now, before we get into the more or less obvious danger of the island, I wanted to quickly discuss how this island even came to be. Before this island was even an island, it was just a hotspot for the snakes because of its temperate climate. It was very favorable for this breed of snake. But the snakes became trapped on the island thousands of years ago following the end of the last ice age, when the rising ocean levels disconnected the island from the mainland. And it's almost like whoever's behind the scenes kind of realized that, hey, these snakes are gonna go to snake jail. But anyways, if you had such a desire to go to this uninhabitable island with absolutely no infrastructure besides a lighthouse from 1909, how exactly would it be dangerous for you? Well, with this extremely high snake population, I wouldn't necessarily say a snake bite is rare, and if one of these pit vipers does bite you, the effects of the venom would cause swelling, local pain, nausea, vomiting, blood blisters, bruising, blood in the vomit and urine, intestinal bleeding, kidney failure, hemorrhages in the brain, and even severe necrosis of muscular tissue. And, I mean, if you're on this remote island, only surrounded by snakes, and you get bit, you're dead. I mean, if we're on the topic of islands, why don't we talk about one more? Specifically, North Sentinel Island in India. This tiny island in the Bay of Bengal is home to the Sentinelese, an indigenous tribe that lives in voluntary isolation, and they defend their isolation with force, protecting themselves from the outside world. Like Snake Island in Brazil, North Sentinel Island is actually illegal to visit, and it's even illegal to go within 3 nautical nautical miles of the island. And although only about 700 people belong to one of the 4 tribes on the island, their hostility makes up for their small population. In recent years, and even in the past, there has been successful missions to North Sentinel Island, but these are few and far between. And although the official death toll is not known, I personally would not risk going to a completely isolated island with people that are not looking to meet you at all. I can only imagine getting an arrow in the knee or a spear through the heart is not fun, but I'll let you guys decide. Okay, so remember earlier when I said that the death road in Bolivia was the only man-made structure on this list? Well, I actually kind of lied, because this next structure is man-made, but the part that makes it so dangerous definitely was not intended. What I'm talking about is Chernobyl in the USSR, specifically the elephant's foot in the basement. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm not going to give an in-depth history of Chernobyl because that's an entirely different video or even series of videos, but the basic gist is in 1986, an explosion happened in reactor 4 of the Chernobyl power plant. This caused a huge meltdown of the facility, which caused thousands and thousands of people to evacuate and caused the deaths of many people as well. The power plant and the surrounding areas have been closed off since the meltdown in 1986. However, to this day, it still produces lethal levels of radiation. In more recent times, there's a ton of urban explorers who have visited Pripyat, which is the city outside of Chernobyl, and the city even takes on tours. So that place isn't too bad itself, even though it is radioactive to a degree. However, what I'm speaking on is the elephant's foot, which is the nickname given to the large mass of corium and other materials formed in the nuclear power plant's basement. This is noted to be one of the most, if not the most, radioactive place in the entire facility. At the time of its discovery, about only 8 months after its formation, the radioactivity near the elephant's foot was approximately 80 to 100 grays per hour, which in layman's terms could basically deliver a 50-50 lethal dose of radiation within 5 minutes. The radiation is actually so strong that all of the pictures you see of the elephant's foot are warped, not necessarily because the cameras were bad, but because the radioactivity was messing with the cameras. If there's one place I wouldn't want to be magically teleported to, it would be the basement of Chernobyl, because chances are you would get a lethal dose of radiation before you could even find your way out. I think this goes without saying, but radiation can damage the DNA in your cells, which causes cancer, which ultimately leads to death. Not fun at all. Now that leaves the last entry on this list, and in my opinion, one of the most interesting and strange. And if you're a fan of 3-sided shapes, you're gonna lose your hat, which is fine, because I got one for you. I'm talking about the Bermuda Triangle in the Atlantic Ocean. In case you didn't know, the Bermuda Triangle is an area of land and water that stretches from Florida to Bermuda all the way down to Puerto Rico. And it's become infamous for the amount of mysterious plane and ship disappearances that have happened in this specific area. The triangle definitely doesn't have a 100% fatality rate, but there have been a lot of interesting, mysterious cases that have taken place in it. And even for people that haven't necessarily died in the triangle, there is a plethora of stories from people that say that they have had very interesting and rare technical glitches that have only happened in this specific area. One example of this would be a compass starting to spin uncontrollably and not giving any accurate direction, which is pretty unexplainable. Another example would be instrument clusters going dark over certain parts of the triangle for absolutely no reason. Now, I will be honest, this place is definitely a bit controversial in the way that is not necessarily believed by all, and it is pretty speculative, but I wanted to make it number 1 on this list because I thought it was pretty interesting, and I think it has one of the higher death tolls. Even if you didn't believe in it, I bet if you were taking a plane ride or a boat ride and you happened to notice that you were going through the Bermuda Triangle, you would probably feel some type of way too. But that's it for me, at least for this episode. But let me know what you guys think. Which place in your opinion is the most dangerous, and would you visit any of these places? Also, really quickly, thank you guys so much for your support of the channel and also our sponsors. I know you guys are always supportive of creators getting that bag. Besides that, if you love watching our videos and you are not subscribed yet, please consider doing so because we are so close to 100K and it would mean a lot to get us there. Thank you guys so much, and until next time, trust me, bro.